They have gone to the White House now. They're just awaiting the official arrival of Zelensky.
Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to this special live coverage we're doing today on the meeting between President Trump and Volodymyr Zelensky taking place at the White House. Obviously, a high-stakes meeting after last week's extraordinary. We had anticipated quite a day today, and it's going to turn out to be quite a day after the summit last week between Putin and Trump, which certainly caught everyone by surprise. The events of last week ended with the world thinking that Trump had completely subjugated foreign policy to his Russian counterpart, and maybe that's exactly what happened. Now, we shall see today. There are a lot of expectations on today's meeting. So we're expecting quite a brigade of people to support Volodymyr Zelensky today. Of course, there is already some of the arrivals arrived at the White House. We're talking about the leaders of the UK, France, Germany, Italy, Finland, the EU, and NATO, all in the house. But the tone is very much now on what Volodymyr Zelensky will do to solve what is really a Russian problem. That was the goal of the summit, according to the Russians, was to put the next step into the American Zelensky court, in the Ukraine court, and then they've achieved that goal, it seems, almost immediately. Moments before we got on the air, there was a tweet that was put out by Volodymyr Zelensky. I'll read it to you. Our main goal is reliable and lasting peace for Ukraine and for the whole of Europe. And it's important that the momentum of all our meetings lead to precisely this result. We understand that we shouldn't expect Putin to voluntarily abandon aggression and new attempts at conquest. That is why pressure must work, and it must be joint pressure from the United States and Europe and from everyone in the world who respects the right to life and the international order. Just checking to see if the motorcade has arrived. We expect it pretty soon. He goes on to say, this is Volodymyr Zelensky, we must stop the killings, and I thank our partners who are working towards this and ultimately towards a reliable and dignified peace, together with the leaders of Finland, the United Kingdom, Italy, and the European Commission. The meeting with President Trump, Ukraine is ready for a real truce and for establishing a new security architecture. We need peace. And of course, it's hard to overstate that last bit there. They need peace. The Ukrainians have been fighting a valiant war for 3 years, but it is beginning to show the wear and tear on this nation that has been pummeled week after week after week by Russian aggression. Of course, this is a war that Russia started, but now, as Donald Trump puts it, it's up to Volodymyr Zelensky to end it, which of course makes no sense at all. What the Russians are looking for is a surrender of some sort by Zelensky. Let's see if they get anywhere near that today. As we wait for this, the arrival here of Zelensky, let's just run through some of the other leaders that are present today at this very important event, because he certainly comes with a lot of support. Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, will be present. Emmanuel Macron, the President of France. Friedrich Merz, the Chancellor of Germany, is there. Giorgia Meloni is there, the Prime Minister of Italy. Alexander Stubb, the President of Finland, and Ursula von der Leyen, the President of the European Commission, all present, as is Mark Rutte, the NATO Secretary General. So we're seeing a European effort, a global effort, but mostly a European effort, to support Volodymyr Zelensky, to support the Ukrainians in this hour of need. And what we should expect the Europeans to do is to call for extensive sanctions to be put on Russia. But I don't know if we will see that result. I don't think the President of the United States is in any mood to introduce any pressure to his partner, some say master in the Kremlin, who certainly ran Friday's summit like he was the man in charge in many ways. The most important thing to happen today is Zelensky's arrival, which we are anticipating at any minute. Let me also lay for you the lay of the land for the rest of the day, as we'll be covering this important day. This is an historic day, obviously. At 2 p.m., I'll be doing the Trump tyranny tracker with our who's probably one of the best Russia experts around, best Ukrainian experts around. She herself, of course, is Ukrainian and has a detailed history of how all of this has happened in the last 20 years. Olga will be with me at 2 p.m. and we'll just give this a quick assessment together at 2 p.m. for 15 minutes. So we look forward to that. And then at 3 o'clock, Dean Blundell and I will be doing the five stack, the five most important stories of the day, which you can bet will be heavily focused on this particular summit, because this is going to be going on all afternoon. These are actual talks taking place. There might even be more substantial talks today than there were on Friday. There's a motorcade coming in right now. Let's listen to see if we can update the audio level here. There's Trump, Ukrainian flag on the front of that car. Trump welcomes Zelensky after the last time he was here, of course, was quite a showdown between these two gentlemen, all in the White House, in the Oval Office. Well, he's back. He's back, and he seems to be...
Russia continues to attack civilians, this time in Kharkiv, killing many.
I think he said he loved them in reference to the Ukrainian people, putting his arms around Zelensky. That was a significant moment there, of course. Last time, as we just pointed out, that is not the situation. That is not what it looked like inside the White House, in the Oval Office. Now, we'll hopefully join that camera internally in just a second or two, and we'll see what they are like inside in that scene of that incredible showdown, which we all remember quite well, with J.D. Vance and the President of the United States dressing down the Ukrainian president there in a quite unique fashion. So I'm not sure if it's going to come up in this feed or not, but I suspect we'll switch cameras at any minute now. This is all running a bit late. All of this should have been happening around 1 o'clock, but they're about 15 minutes behind. And as we saw there just a few minutes ago, the president seemed very supportive of Volodymyr Zelensky. He put his arms around the president of Ukraine. He seemed to say, if I heard him correctly, that he loves the people of Ukraine, and they're not anticipating this kind of showdown that many people saw last time we had this meeting. I want to reiterate that the expectations for the Ukrainians are very deliberate and quite specific. As we read to you a few minutes ago, Volodymyr Zelensky had this to say: our main goal is a reliable and lasting peace for Ukraine and for the whole of Europe. And it is important that the momentum of all our meetings leads to precisely this result. So they're looking for a reliable and lasting peace. You could bet that means that they're looking for security guarantees from the United States and from the European leaders, and they are likely to get those security guarantees. Now, implied in the fact that they might get security guarantees is the notion that some territory might be ceded to the Russians. Now, this is, of course, against the Ukrainian constitution, but lots of things can be against the constitution until the constitution is amended or until the reality of war is seen. Now, many will say that this is appeasement. I would tend to agree that this looks like appeasement, but considering the constraints that people have right now, what are the options? Do the continued killing of 7,000 people a week, is that the better option? Or is there a ceasefire with some sort of security guarantees give us all enough time to catch our breath for what could be a continued conflict? I think what would be a mistake would be to think of this as the end of this conflict. Even if there was some sort of agreement by the end of today, you can much bet that what we will see will be continued attempts by Russia to escalate this, to attack other countries. This seems to be the underpinning of almost everything Russia does, is a tendency to agree to ceasefires and then ignore them completely. So that's maybe where we land up. They are likely getting set up inside right now, and we hope to see pictures inside the Oval Office. As we saw the first time Zelensky visited Trump, at that particular meeting, there was a showdown of sorts. This time, it's all expected to be far more amicable, but we shall see what happens when everything happens inside the White House and the cameras switch in there, which we're expecting soon. This meeting will go on, I think, till around 3 o'clock. So they'll do a quick spray, they'll chat for a bit, privately, obviously, negotiate some things privately. Maybe some of this stuff has already been worked out. Who knows? And then at 3 o'clock, if I'm not mistaken, the European leaders will have their turn to sit around with Trump in a more of a multilateral sense to discuss what may happen. So we're looking potentially at a spray by the media, followed by a bilateral between Zelensky and Trump that could last all the way till 3. And then at 3 o'clock, we shall see the European leaders in a multilateral. Just to catch up on what we've been seeing here, a few minutes ago, Volodymyr Zelensky arrived at the White House beaming, looking very happy.
We've had a lot of good discussions, a lot of good talks, and I think progress is being made, very, very substantial progress in many ways. We had a good meeting, as you know, just a short while ago with the president of Russia, and I think there's a possibility that something could come out of it, and today's meeting is very important. We have, I guess, the seven very powerful leaders from Europe, and we're going to be meeting with them right after this meeting. And thank you very much for being here.
Thank you so much, Mr. President. If I can, first of all, thank you for invitation, and thank you very much for your efforts, personal efforts to stop things and stop this war. Thank you. And using this opportunity, many thanks to your wife, First Lady of the United States. She sent a letter to Putin about our children, abducted children, and my wife, she, First Lady of Ukraine, she gave the letter. It's not to you, to your wife.
Oh, I want it.
Yeah. So we are saying this sensitive topic, yes, please. And thanks to our partners, and that you supported this format, that after our meeting we can have leaders who are around us, UK, France, Germany, Italy, Finland, EU, NATO, I mean all partners around Ukraine supporting us. Thanks them, and thank you very much for invitation.
Thank you very much for being here.
President Trump.
Do you think it's fair?
Yes, Peter, go ahead.
Thank you, President Trump. So, President Zelensky, you say in a post on X today, Russia must end this war, which it itself started. President Trump, you say President Zelensky of Ukraine can end the war with Russia almost immediately if he wants to. Which is it?
Yeah, I think that's true. I think we're going to have a meeting. I think if everything works out well today, we'll have a trilat. And I think there will be a reasonable chance of ending the war when we do that.
And is this the end of the road for American support for Ukraine? Is today's meeting deal or no deal?
I can never say that. It's never the end of the road. People are being killed, and we want to stop that. So I would not say it's the end of the road. No, I think we have a good chance of doing it. It's been almost 4 years now that a lot of people were killed last week. A lot of people last week. I mean, millions of people killed, but a lot of people last week for whatever reason. A big number, a lot of soldiers, on both sides. And I know the president, I know myself, and I believe Vladimir Putin wants to see it ended.
And as you met with Putin on Friday, today you've got President Zelensky here. As you listen to Russia and Ukraine, which side has the better cards? Right?
Well, I don't want to say that. I'm just here to be, look, this isn't my war. This is Joe Biden's war. He's the one that had a lot to do with this happening, and we want to get it ended. And we want it to end good for everybody. We want it to end good. The people of Ukraine have suffered incredibly.
And to that point, President Zelensky, are you prepared to keep sending Ukrainian troops to their deaths for another couple years, or are you going to agree to redraw the maps?
Thank you for your question. So, first of all, we live under each day attacks. That today have been a lot of attacks and a lot of wounded people, and the child was dead, small one year and a half. So we need to stop this war, to stop Russia, and we need support American and European partners. And we will do our best for this. So, and I think we show that we are strong people, and we supported the idea of the United States, personally of President Trump, to stop this war, to make a diplomatic way of finishing this war. And we are ready for trilateral, as President said. This is a good signal about trilateral. I think this is very good. Thank you.
Mr. President, how long do we still wait
will be
Right.
achieved, if the peace deal will be achieved, are you going to be willing to send American peacekeepers to Ukraine?
Well, we're going to work with Ukraine, we're going to work with everybody, and we're going to make sure that if there's peace, the peace is going to stay long-term. This is very long-term. We're not talking about a 2-year peace and then we end up in this mess again. We're going to make sure that everything's good. We'll work with Russia, we're going to work with Ukraine, and we're going to make sure it works. And I think if we can get to peace, it's going to work. I have no doubt about it.
Your team has talked about security guarantees. Could that involve U.S. troops? Would you roll that out in the future?
We'll let you know that maybe later today. We're meeting with 7 great leaders of great countries also, and we'll be talking about that. They'll all be involved, but there'll be a lot of help. When it comes to security, there's going to be a lot of help. It's going to be good. They are first line of defense because they're there. They're Europe. But we're going to help them out also. We'll be involved.
Mr. President, Vladimir Putin mentioned that the war will not end without addressing the root causes of this war. Have you had an understanding what are the root causes of this war?
Well, look, the war is going to end. When it ends...
Mr. President, can you tell us about your conversations with European leaders and what they need to see to support an end to the war?
Yeah, well, we're going to be meeting with a and 7 very powerful, very big countries, and great people, all friends of mine and friends of yours. And we're going to have some suggestions. Maybe they want to see peace. They would like to see peace. We're going to have a lasting peace. Just to answer the first part of your question, we're going to have a lasting peace. I hope it's going to be immediately. I hope it doesn't have to go on. And I think people of the whole world is going to be very happy when that's announced. Yeah, please.
Mr. President. You posted on social media, Mr. President, a very touching letter from the First Lady. And the letter was hand-delivered to President Putin. And it calls for an end to the war, essentially, because of the children and the children's future. Why did the First Lady feel that letter was necessary? Was it because she believes that Mr. Putin is the aggressor in the war? Is a similar letter being hand-delivered to President Zelensky?
So the First Lady felt very strongly. She's watched the same thing that you watch and that I watch. I see things that you don't get to see, and it's horrible. But when she's got a great love of children, she has a wonderful son that she loves, probably more than anybody, including me. I hate to say it, but she loves her son. She loves children. And she hates to see something like this happening, and that goes for other wars too. I mean, she sees the heartbreak, the parents, the funerals that you see on television. Always funerals. We want to see something other than funerals. No, she felt it was a beautiful letter. It was very well received by him, and she did ask me to say, you know, she would love to see this end. She would love to see it end, and she. Says it very openly, very proudly, and with great sorrow because so many people have been killed.
Mr. President, last week,
Brian, go ahead, Brian.
Yes, sir. I've got a question for each of you.
Yes.
First of all, Mr. President Zelensky, you look fabulous in that suit.
I said the same thing.
Yeah, you look good.
I said the same thing.
Yeah, looks good on
I
you.
said to the one that attacked you last time. See, now he's
I remember that.
Yeah, I apologize to you. You look wonderful. No, my first question for you, President Zelensky.
In the same suit. You see, I changed, you are not.
Maybe yours is much better than mine. Real quickly, upon peace, God willing we get peace, are you open to holding an election in your country?
Yes, of course. We are open for election, yes. We have to do safety circumstances. And a little bit, we need to work in the parliament, because during the war you can't have elections, but we can do security. We need, maybe, how to say, we need a truth, yes, everywhere, in the battlefield, in the sky, in the sea, yeah, to make possible for people to do democratic, open, legal elections.
So you say during the war you can't have elections. So let me just say 3.5 years from now. So you mean if we happen to be in a war with somebody, No more elections. Oh, that's good. I wonder what the fake
You like
news
this
is
idea?
gonna say. No, this is-
No.
Speaking of news, I got a question for you. This sounds insane for me even to ask this, but do you think the American media really doesn't even want a peace deal because they've seen they've been so critical of you every step of the way as you lead the charge for peace?
It's an amazing phenomenon. I said that if in the settlement you got Moscow, St. Petersburg, and thousands of miles around them, they would say I made a bad deal. The level of hatred and animosity is incredible. Not with all. I mean, we have great people up here. We also have terrible people up there that I think are told what to say. But, you know, in solving all of these wars, they don't even write about it. You know, I saw major wars. I saw wars that have been going on for 31, 35, and 37, and a couple of quicker ones. One that was going to go into a full-blown deal very quickly. You know what the one I'm talking about. It was a big one. But they don't even write about that. No matter what I do, no matter what, and you know, this is not anything to do with you. It's probably to your advantage in a certain way. But no matter what I do, no matter what deal I make, from my standpoint, you'll come out good. Maybe President Putin will come out good. But they'll say, Trump was absolutely horrible. It's just it. And I've lived with that for a long time. I've lived with it since just before the first election. I used to get great publicity. Now I get the worst publicity anyone's ever gotten in office, but I won in a landslide, so that people understand. They're the only ones that count, ultimately. But I've also had great reporters. I've had journalists that are very good. But it's very sad when you do the right thing. As an example, they said, because of the fact that Vladimir Putin came to American soil, this was a tremendous defeat for Donald Trump. No, it was really wonderful that he did it. It was a hard thing for him to do, to be honest with you. It was the opposite of what they said, but they said it. Now, if he didn't come, they'd say that was also bad for Trump. You know, there's no way. And there's just a great dishonesty of the press, and I think that's why it's lost its credibility. You know, its credibility is at an all-time low. We have a thing going on right now in D.C. We went from the most unsafe place anywhere to a place that now friends are calling me up, Democrats are calling me up, and they're saying, sir, I want to thank you. My wife and I went out to dinner last night for the first time in 4 years, and Washington, D.C. is safe, and you did that in 4 days. I'll tell you, it's safe. I had another friend of mine, he has a son who's a great golfer, he's on tour, and he came in fourth yesterday in the big tournament where Scotty Scheffler made the great shot, and he said his son is going to dinner in Washington, D.C. tonight. I said, would you have allowed that to happen a year ago? He said, no way, no way. He said, what you've done is incredible. And I think the people realize it. But the press says, he's a dictator, he's trying to take over. No, all I want is security for our people. But people that haven't gone out to dinner in Washington, D.C. in 2 years are going out to dinner. And the restaurants the last 2 days were busier than they've been in a long time.
Sir, I walked around yesterday with MTG. If you could walk around with DC with MTG and not be attacked, the city is safe.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. President. Last week you warned of what you called severe consequences if a 30-day ceasefire or any type of ceasefire were not agreed to by Russia. Will there be severe consequences? Does that change because of
I don't think you need a
President
ceasefire. You know, if you look at the 6 deals that I settled this year, they were all at war. I didn't do any ceasefires. And I know that it might be good to have, but I can also understand strategically why, well, you know, one country or the other wouldn't want it. You have a ceasefire and they rebuild and rebuild and rebuild, and, you know, maybe they don't want that. But if you look at the 6 deals that we made peace and you know, long-term, long-running wars, I didn't do any ceasefires. Would I like the concept. You know, I like the concept of a ceasefire for one reason, because you'd stop killing people immediately, as opposed to in 2 weeks or 1 week or whatever it takes. But we can work a deal where we're working on a peace deal while they're fighting. They have to fight. I wish they could stop. I'd like them to stop. But strategically, that could be a disadvantage for one side or the other. But all of these deals I made without even the mention of the words ceasefire.
President Zelensky,
Can you explain the decision to offer Ukraine Article 5 like security guarantees, but stop short of pushing for their full membership?
Yeah, well, we haven't done anything on that yet. If you look back and you go back long before President Putin, it was always a statement that they would never allow Ukraine into NATO. So that was a statement that was made, but we haven't discussed any of that yet. We're going to be discussing it today. But we will give them very good protection, very good security. That's part of it. And the people that are waiting for us, they are, I think they're very like-minded. They want to help out also.
Thank you, President. Thank you, President Trump.
Are you disappointed there's no
The United
ceasefire,
States,
Mr. President?
the United States has already given hundreds of billions of dollars to this war effort in Ukraine.
Biden.
At best, it is a stalemate, and the killing continues. So, President Trump, how much more is the United States willing to give Ukraine? And President Zelensky, how much more do you want?
Well, I'll start off just by saying we're not giving anything now. We're selling weapons. This is something before, I guess the number is well over $300 billion. That was under Joe Biden, a corrupt politician, not a smart man, never was. By the way, go back 40 years, he was not a smart man 40 years ago either, but now he's in particular bad. This was done by a corrupt administration that shouldn't have been in, and frankly, if the right results of the election were given, if I were president, this war would have never taken place, and he would have been very happy, because he would have liked to have seen. I mean, they went through hell. He went through hell. This war would have never happened, and the people that were killed, a couple of million people, a lot of people with soldiers and everything else, and the people that have been displaced and forced into other areas and other countries because of what's happened, none of that would have happened. And I'm just saying that he was a horrible president, whether it was the borders or this, he was just a horrible, corrupt president.
Mr. President,
You want to
I can. Thank you so much. So first of all, we have possibility now to buy weapon from the United States. We are thankful for this program and this opportunity. We are thankful for Europe. They pay for this. And through NATO program, for example, Pearl and etc. We have some programs where we can have some money to finance this. And this is a part, I think, it's not a part for the war and to defend us. It also will be a part for security guarantees, to strengthen our army, to rearm Ukrainian army. This is very, very important. And it depends how much money we need to rearm. For example, the question of air defense, we spoke about it with President Trump, and I'm happy that we have now bilateral decisions and we work on it with production, American production. Nobody in Europe has so many air defense like Patriots, for example. We need it very much, and this is also about defending.
I think the good news, we make the best military equipment in the world by far. You mentioned the Patriots. How good are they?
Systems.
We have systems, they're literally 100% foolproof. And it's really like shooting two bullets, two bullets hitting each other in the air in a space like this. The chance is 100%. It's 99 to 100%. So we sell the equipment to NATO. And NATO does what, I don't know what the arrangement is that you have with, but I know that they want you to have the equipment. And we're getting the best equipment in the world, but they pay us for the equipment. Under Biden, it was just crazy what was going on. I believe the number is over 300. I think it could be $350 billion worth of equipment and money and everything else. And we've made more progress in settling this war in the last 2 months than they made in 4 years. This should have been settled a long time ago, but it should have never happened. Yeah, please.
Real quickly, you pushed out on social media.
All right, Brian, go first.
You pushed out on social media about doing away with mail-in ballots and potentially electronic voting machines. Can you expand on that and how important
Well, that's a very off-topic, just really quickly. Mail-in ballots are corrupt. Mail-in ballots, you can never have a real democracy with mail-in ballots. And we, as a Republican Party, are going to do everything possible that we get rid of mail-in ballots. We're going to start with an executive order that's being written right now by the best lawyers in the country to end mail-in ballots because they're corrupt and you know that we're the only country in the world, I believe, I may be wrong, but just about the only country in the world that uses them because of what's happened, massive fraud all over the place. The other thing we want change are the machines. For all of the money they spend, it's approximately 10 times more expensive than paper ballots. And paper ballots are very sophisticated with the watermark paper and everything else. We would get secure elections, we'd get much faster results. The machines, I mean, they say we're going to have the results in 2 weeks. With paper ballots, you have the results that night. Most people, but most people, many countries use paper ballots. It's the most secure form. So between paper ballots, very, very important, paper ballots, and I think maybe even more important, the mail-in voting. We're going to end mail-in voting. It's a fraud. If you have mail-in vote, even Jimmy Carter with this commission, they set it up. He said the one thing about mail-in voting, you will never have an honest election if you have mail-in. And it's time that the Republicans get tough and stop it, because the Democrats want it. It's the only way they can get elected. Because with men and women's sports and with transgender for everybody and open borders and all of the horrible things, and now the new thing is they love crime. They're fighting me on the fact that I've made Washington, D.C. safe. We're not going to get mugged, beaten up, or killed like all the people you've been watching get so badly hurt. I'm glad, I hate to take your time with this, but I'm glad you asked me that question. We're going to stop mail-in ballots because it's corrupt. You know, when you go to a voting booth and you do it the right way and you go to a state that runs it properly, you go in, they even ask me, they asked me for my license plate, for identity. I said, I don't know if I have it. They said, sir, you have to have it. I was very impressed, actually. But it's very hard to cheat with mail-in voting. As you know what happens in California, it's so corrupt, where some people get 5, 6, 7 ballots delivered to them. Now, we got to stop mail-in voting, and the Republicans have to lead the charge. The Democrats want it because they have horrible policy. If you have mail-in voting, you're not going to have many Democrats get elected. That's bigger than anything having to do with redistricting, believe me. And the Republicans have to get smart. We're not going to have a country. I said for a long time at rallies, you need borders and you need free and fair elections. Those two things, otherwise you don't have. We have strong borders now. In 90 days, Mr. President, we didn't have 0 in 3 months. Not one person came in illegally into our country. In fact, even I find that hard to believe, but it's run by a little bit of a liberal group that put out the numbers, so I guess it's, but 0, 0, and 0. You go back a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 millions of people poured into our country. It was terrible. Thank you very much.
What security guarantees do you need from President Trump to be able to make a deal? Is it American troops, intelligence, equipment? What is it?
From MSNBC.
And they want to give protection. They feel very strongly about it, and we'll help them out with that. I think it's very important. I think it's very important to get the deal.
What would you say to the Ukrainian people right now who are suffering under the
Everyone on
Russian
the feed wants to share with me if you can hear the audio from the MS.
People will stand with them.
Well, I know Ukrainian people. I've known many over the years. They're great people. They're smart. They're energetic. They love their country. I mean, they love their country, and we want to get this war ended. That's all I can do. I love the Ukrainian people, but I love all people. I love the Russian people. I love them all. I want to get the war stopped. Very important.
Mr. President, was there any aspect of your discussion with Vladimir Putin that left you disappointed?
Look, we just spoke to, I was just telling the president, I just spoke to President Putin indirectly, and we're going to have a phone call right after these meetings today. And we may or may not have a trilat. If we don't have a trilat, then the fighting continues.
What we heard there was a lot of lies by the President of the United States, but we also heard the potential for some sort of agreement. And let's just be clear about what they did talk about. They talked about a potential trilateral meeting which would happen after today's meeting. So if today's goes well, Zelensky and the meeting with the Europeans, which should be 2 separate meetings, maybe there'll now be 1 meeting. But if that goes well and they can achieve consensus on what I believe will be security guarantees, will be the big problem that they need to solve today. You know, both Zelensky and Trump were at pains to point out that they wanted this to be a lasting peace. They didn't want something that would just last for a couple of years. So what we're going to see is a lot of conversation around security guarantees. Now, implicit in that is that there'll be a land swap, not even a land swap, a land for peace deal, meaning Putin will have won the war by annexing this territory along the Black Sea there, which he has been so, determined to declare Russian. But maybe with that, there'll also be some sort of opinion or at least a declaration that Russia recognizes the Kyiv government. It might mean that there'll be some sort of transition out of the Zelensky government through normal elections and that Zelensky himself won't face any prosecution. Not that he should, but of course, in the world of Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin, black is white and white is black, and you might just get prosecutions against Vladimir Zelensky and his team there. They'll be looking for air defenses and they'll be looking for a military pipeline of military equipment. I got that from Zelensky's statements that it's not just going to be about can you send troops on the ground, but they want to rebuild the Ukrainian army. They want to have air defenses so that in the future, if this thing happens again, the Ukrainians will be rearmed, restored, and restocked to be able to continue solid defense of what is left of Ukraine, or that's much smaller Ukraine. It sounds to me like there will be security guarantees offered by the United States and the European countries, but that won't extend to NATO or even any sort of membership of NATO. That's not going to happen. But there will be security guarantees as much as that can be instituted. Last time Ukraine signed security guarantees, they lost their nuclear weapons and landed up where we are today. The criticism of Biden, of course, is very heated and inappropriate and wrong on every level. You don't need me to tell you the obvious there, but Putin has obviously gotten into Trump's ear there, and he's convincing him that this is somehow to do with Biden. The reality of this war is that Putin attacked Ukraine, an independent sovereign country, and took over a vast amount of land, has continued to do so, prosecute a war against an independent sovereign country. And now for the first time in post-World War II history, we're seeing land being given potentially to a attacking state as an aggressor in a war in a world that we should not have had anything like this. And here we are in that world simply because Donald Trump is beholden to Vladimir Putin. So let me see. If you've got any questions, I take them on the chat here, and then we'll wrap up in just a few minutes. I'll talk to Olga Lautman on the Trump tyranny track, because she's obviously going to have very keen opinions about this. Neither Trump nor Putin are believable, much less reliable. Of course, they just aren't. I can't cope with this guy anymore. I know a lot of people said they just couldn't even hear him talk, and it is difficult to hear him talk with the amount of lies he keeps spewing. It's still such a mess. Hard no, says Sabina Bryan. No land to Russia. What a mess with this. JP says, can there be any peace when the United States and Russia are so dishonest and untrustworthy? Trump is as thick as shit, blowhard. Putin lies, says Anne-Marie Haynes, and he'll go back on any deal made. He wants to get back all the land Russia handed years ago. He won't stop attacking. I mean, this is clearly the thing. You can't really trust Vladimir Putin for anything. Every time there's been a ceasefire announced, he has broken it. This whole war is a testament to the fact that he is not to be trusted. And, the amount of American administrations that have tried to make peace with Russia or to might reset or whatever it is with Russia, well, you can just count every single one of them, has never worked because Putin is not trustworthy in any way. And his aggression will continue. They're continuing to develop these nuclear weapons. They continue to have designs on Canada, via America's empire expansion, also on Greenland. This is a very trying time, obviously, for the world. And Putin is responsible. And we're just going to keep seeing that. But I guess they're going to try to do appeasement. That's where we are. We're going to be in Chamberlain territory. My gosh, can you believe that we're doing this again? But really, what are the obstacles? What are the options? Can we actually think of anything else but to continue this horrendous grinding war that is killing so many people? I don't know what the answer is. I really don't. American troops under Trump are occupying American cities against Americans. So who would American troops be protecting in Ukraine if they were peacekeeping? Good point, Jenny. There's a lot of deployments going on, but honestly, wouldn't you rather see the Americans inside Ukraine or at least supporting any sort of peace than not? I certainly would. I think it's much better than having them leave Europe, which is what they were planning to do. Will Putin not give up that? I mean, I think we have to assume that the minute they're talking about security guarantees, they're going to be talking about giving up the land that lines up against the Black Sea over there. It just doesn't seem to me like there's any other option here except giving up a significant amount of land in order for the security guarantees. This is really the West capitulating to Putin. It really is appeasement. Who knows if it's the right thing or the wrong thing? We'll find out over time. But many people would argue this is the most wrong policy that the Trump administration could be following. Were any non-Trumpian journalists allowed to questions? That was really interesting choreography today at the press conference. It seemed like the first 6 or 7 questions were asked by Marjorie Taylor Greene's boyfriend, who's obviously a shill for Sputnik, I think, or one of those Russian fronts. Just distasteful in every way that there is a Russian operative basically spewing off questions at the beginning there. You heard him talk about Zelensky wearing a suit. Zelensky was very quick rebuffing that, saying, well, he has not changed his suit, but Zelensky is wearing a suit, which is an unusual difference. Maybe it's a very interesting styled suit. It's all black on black on black. I guess that's just because in reverence to this day. How is giving Putin land going to stop him? Well, that's supposedly the land of security guarantees. That's supposedly a trilateral agreement, which includes security guarantees and includes recognition of Ukraine by Russia. I don't buy it. I think we'll end up in a war in a couple of years from now, regardless. This is where we are at. And because there is such a hold over the US presidency right now by the Russian president, it seems remarkably unlikely that we will face any other opportunities or any other way off ramps to this war. It just seems to me that Trump is so beholden to Putin. And so what Putin is willing to accept is the baseline. And we're just playing to Russia at the moment. It's sad, but it's true. And maybe this is where we are today. At the end of the day, we might see the guns stop firing, the drones stop being launched, and the missiles stopping being sent at Ukraine. Maybe that's ultimately an important thing, that Ukrainians get to breathe a sigh of relief for some of that. But this is not really going to be a just agreement. And certainly it's appalling that Putin is walking away with any land at all. But of course, this is only speculative. We're not even there yet. We still have lots of meetings to go. At 3 o'clock, they're going to be sitting down with the multilateral European leaders. That will be an interesting conversation. Many of them will be pushing back on Zelensky's behalf, saying, do not give any land. We shall see where we get to. Maybe it'll be a ceasefire alone that they get to in exchange for these security guarantees. But I don't think we're going to see a ceasefire from Vladimir Putin unless he gets the land. All right, I am going to end this coverage, and I apologize for the technical issues we've had throughout it. It's always interesting trying out new things. And I thank you for being here, and thank you for supporting Narrative at narrative.org. By the way, we have a 50% off current deal on our annual subscriptions because prices have gone up. But in order to mitigate all of that, what we've done is we've cut our annual subscription by 50%, which basically keeps it flat to where it was before. So in terms of the discounted rate before, the same discounted rate applies as we used to have from minus 35, now it's 50%, but the end result is the same for you. So take advantage of that if you can. The 50% annual rate currently on narrative.org. I will see Olga Lautman in a few minutes. We'll talk a lot more about this. And thank you for being here on this coverage. And I shall be back at 3 o'clock, hopefully, as we watch the Europeans discuss what they want to discuss with the President of the United States. Have a great afternoon. We'll see you in just a few minutes.